Hello everybody and welcome to week 2 of English as a Medium of Instruction for Academics. This is Rob and Mary with your weekly video feedback. Would you like to say hello?
Hello. Nice to see you. I can't see you, but you can see me.
Yes. Hello to everybody and a big hello and thank you to our mentors from Brazil. We didn't actually mention them by name last week because there wasn't a flag in the discussions to actually show that they are mentors who are helping us with the course. So that flag is now there so you can see when they make a contribution. And I'm going to make an attempt at pronouncing their names. Please forgive me if it's not correct. Janina, Fernanda, Ana Luisa, Cecilia, Ana Larissa, Giovanna, Raquel and Ana Luisa, another Ana Luisa. They're all, as far as I know, from the Universidade de Minas Gerais. Was that good, do you think?
I would have been weak and said UFMG, but Mary is braver than I am, so well done, Mary.
A bit silly, really. Anyway, forgive me for the pronunciation of your names and your university, but we're really grateful that you've agreed to participate with us, and thank you very, very much indeed. And thank you to everybody who's participated. The quality of the discussions, I find, Rob, are really high on this run. People are engaging at a level that I can't quite remember as being so deep or as high, whichever metaphor you look for in describing a discussion. So thank you very much indeed. Things that I'd like to point out: Luana's research into expressions of opinion was a wonderful contribution, so thank you very, very much indeed, Luana.
One of many.
One of many.
Yes. Thank you.
Luana is really committing to this course, and all we can do is say thank you, Luana. It's fantastic. Another example would be the very deep engagement with that step, which is about I think, I believe, I feel, all of these expressions of opinion. What do we really mean when we're using various terms, and to what extent does it matter, and to what extent does it matter in an EMI context? There's a wonderful discussion going on there with a depth and a quality that for me I find really outstanding. So thank you very, very much indeed. So I think over to you, Rob, for a few comments.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
I would like, also to add to the I think, I feel, etc. discussion, that I think having self-awareness and awareness of the context is very important, because quite often, particularly in an intercultural EMI setting, if you're standing at the front as a lecturer to an audience of students, often we can micro-analyse, like, what's the subtle difference in meaning between I think and I feel, but quite often the audience will receive essentially a hedged statement.
Yes.
You know, when a professor says I feel, it comes with a certain gravitas.
A gravitas.
A gravitas, yes. That's maybe less subjective than someone offering you advice on which colour to paint your kitchen.
Yes.
You know, it's so. I think that essentially the word choice is basically, for you, is choosing words that you are comfortable with and realising that you can't really change the meaning that much.
No.
If you're talking about your field, you're expressing your views or your knowledge, you know, they're not going to receive a fact as an abstract opinion just because you used I think.
Yes.
And likewise, they're not going to receive an opinion as a solid fact if you say I believe. You know, it's we're talking at a level that maybe the context and your role as an educator is going to be more influential than the subtle differences in meaning. But it was a very interesting discussion, I'll agree.
And I'd like to add to that of course there's your personality that comes into it as well. I know that I tend to use the word I feel quite a lot. And I also use my feeling is that. And this is just me. I haven't analysed it in great detail, but it must be indicative of some side to my personality. But maybe I'm a feeler rather than a thinker. But let's not go too far down that avenue.
I think we should stay and psychoanalyse Mary for a while longer.
Well, I was thinking of psychoanalysing you.
Okay, I'm a much colder educator. I said on one of the steps, I think I say I feel when I'm criticising somebody.
Oh, do you?
That's
right,
that's when I use emotional language.
Yes.
I feel you could have done better here, and it's like a way of
all right.
trying to be nice. But no, I'm much drier.
You're drier and colder.
I'm cold, yes.
And I'm warm and soft.
You're cuddly, yes.
I think we'd better move on.
Let's move
That's
on.
far
Yes.
too much about us.
Yes.
Yes, we're revealing far too much about ourselves here. Should we mention some of these questions that we've put on the step?
Yes.
Yeah. There are some questions. I won't read them all out, but they're mainly about ELF, English as a lingua franca, and the effect that ELF might have on you, your practice, your EMI practice, and so on. These are questions that are important to Rob and I because this is like our background. So rather than us expressing what we think at the moment, what you think is far, far, far more important. Next week is the live session. We'll talk about that again towards the end of today's video update. But we'd really like you to think about those questions and then put in your questions, your thoughts, etc. in this area on next week's step. All right? And then we don't know whether you'll be able to join us live or not, but perhaps put your views and comments on the step so we can refer to them if you're not there live, because we don't want to miss anything that you're thinking on those topics. But if you are live, then you can send them in to us and we'll talk about that procedure later on.
Yes.
Anything you'd like to add?
Just add that we'll also post questions to people who've done the run before on the Facebook group, and it's a nice chance to mention again that there is a Facebook group. If you use Facebook, and I respect your reasons for not using Facebook if you don't want to, but the absolutely, you can type in the title of this course. You'll find a group with lots of members now. How many?
It's about 550.
About 550. And so we'll post the question there as well and hopefully get some insights from different people to discuss next week.
Yes.
And is that a good link to the questions we've had this week?
I think that's a very good link.
Wonderful.
You're getting good at this,
Thank
Rob.
you very much.
Future career in television, I think.
Thank you. So we had some questions. 2 people asked questions on this step, which again, as Mary said, we'd encourage you to do next week for the live video so we can discuss what you're interested in rather than what we are interested in only. So the first question was from Luana, which asked about ELF or EMI in a non-English as a lingua franca context. And I wanted to answer that at different levels. So essentially her question is, should EMI be used in a situation where it is not the lingua franca? So there is a first language that everybody can use. For example, Portuguese in Brazil, lots of contexts, but not all, might have a group of students and the teacher who can all use Portuguese. So I wanted to say, in general, maybe controversially, I don't know, I would say that it's very common that damaging practices can be put in place where people are following trends, they want to get higher in league tables, they want to do what internationalization activities are trendy at the moment, and they will implement English as a medium of instruction without a purpose for it. And I would normally have quite a negative view of that personally. And I think if English is not needed to be the medium of instruction, then perhaps it shouldn't be. But I would also add that to say it's a non-ELF context can be difficult, thinking about like universities' trajectories. So sometimes they want to attract the international students that would make it an ELF context. They want to have EMI to attract international scholars who perhaps might not speak the home language. So in that context, you'd say maybe they're trying to create an English as a lingua franca scenario, but that English as a lingua franca scenario cannot exist without English being the medium. So sometimes a university might have the opportunity to create an international program, but first they have to inconvenience everybody by making them speak English. And again, Japan was used as an example in week 1, but that's an example where exactly that happened in lots of universities, and now international students are starting to trickle in,
Yes.
metaphorically. And the other thing is the field. So you get some fields where you'd say English is the lingua franca of communication, and that's where it gets complicated, where you might say in this physical space, the students don't need to use English to communicate directly, but when they go into a wider field, they will be using English. English is the lingua franca. The materials they can access are mostly in English. Then you have another problem where I think the word lingua franca perhaps needs an extended definition. And I'm not saying English should be the only medium of instruction in those contexts, but there are lots of fields, English language teaching being one, where you can't really ignore the presence of English around the activities happening, even if that group share a first language that's not English. So I just say it's a very complicated answer to the question. But yes, I think there are lots of universities around the world that have, do, and will implement English where it's very, very ill-advised and it's not a good practice and it's damaging people's education, but it's a very complicated answer.
Yes. I mean, basically what I think both of us think is that the medium of instruction should benefit the students. That should be the overriding principle, benefit them now and thinking of their future careers. But sometimes that decision is made for other reasons, and that's where we begin to have a few questions, a few doubts.
Yeah. And we had another... Oh, sorry, are you going to add something? I have another question.
Well, Luana, really, you've spent so much time with us this time. You highlighted the university policy in your establishment, which mentions respect for linguistic diversity, access to learning at different levels, and cooperation between all members of the community. And I thought that was lovely, that in fact it wasn't the language that was specified, but principles in behaving respectfully with other people, and I was quite impressed by that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yes, shall I go to the next question?
Yes, do please.
I will. I've left you to pronounce all the other names. I'll try this one.
What is it?
Rogerio.
Rogerio.
I will go with that.
Okay.
Apologies if it's wrong, Rogerio. So he said EMI is different from CLIL. And is there a specific level of English that people should have to engage with EMI, asking specifically about undergraduate students and also teachers? We have had one response from...
It was...
Don't tell me.
It was Angela, I believe, who... I believe expressed her opinion quite strongly that teachers should have C2. I hope I haven't misremembered that. I think we might be a little bit more generous and say that in fact teachers could have a slightly lower level than that, because we believe in using all of the resources at your disposal to make meaning.
And
I can see that you want to say something.
Oh, I was going to say something. It's my second "it depends" of the video. I am very much against standardisation across universities when it's an abstract measurement. So even something like C2 on the Common European Framework of Reference is, I find it problematic. It doesn't get, sometimes people can test C2 in an exam and actually their academic language skills are very low or their capacity to work in their discipline is incredibly low. And other times you get people who don't reach that standard in global exams, but whose ability to communicate in their subject and whose perhaps knowledge of vocabulary or knowledge of how to present their subject is incredible and can easily compensate for the general English that they lack. So I think it depends on so many factors that institutions, disciplines and individual programs need to make their choices very carefully because different programs have different linguistic demands on students. They have lots of disciplines. You write a bunch of numbers that I don't understand and then say therefore and then write more numbers that I don't understand and then say however and more, so actually the linguistic demands on those students is quite low. Whereas you get other students who are doing a critical gender analysis of the works of Bronte and the
Which
demands,
Bronte?
all of them together. But Anne is my favourite.
Oh really?
Yes, controversial again.
Yes.
But I'm kind of I'm of the opinion that we really need to stand against an idea that somebody should say you should have IELTS 6.5 and that somehow answers all the questions about language proficiency. Because and we work in the UK higher education system and we are constantly fighting this battle not to standardise across all disciplines because it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. We're on the wrong end of this and have to patch up all the omissions, if you can talk about it in that way, that really do hinder a student's progress.
Yeah, and the second question there links to that because that's what we do a lot in our department as well, is how do you support students with language difficulties? And that's a big question. And I might push this to the live session a little bit as well.
I think it would be a good idea.
But just to say that it's no one person's role to perform that. I think you need a language department of language teachers and English for specific purposes teachers that can support. But it's also within the discipline you need, if you're teaching students that have linguistic challenges, you also need to meet that in how you deliver the content, how you prepare students to engage with the key words in lectures, how you prepare them to write assignments. And there is a lot that needs to be done, and there isn't one department or one person that should fall to.
No. Totally agree. There's so much more to be said on that. So let's leave that until next week.
And there's one more question.
One more question, okay. All right.
Does assessment in EMI programmes take into account language development of students or only focus on the discipline? And that's also from Rogerio. Thank you very much for your questions. And I would say that typically the language assessment that occurs is the way that the language is used to perform the disciplinary tasks. So for example, if they have an assignment, language will be assessed on some level in how they communicate what they're doing. I think it's a mistake to assess students' general language proficiency when they are there to study through the medium of English and not study English. So CLIL, you mentioned the difference between CLIL and EMI. I'd say in an EMI scenario, it's about the disciplinary knowledge, it's about communicating within the discipline. You might give formative feedback if they're having language support, but that score should not go towards their grade. In my view, if you're teaching in a context where you feel something should be done differently for contextual reasons, then I would like to hear about it because It's not Rob's rule, it's a discussion.
It's a discussion. All right.
Thank you, Mary. Sorry.
I'd like to pick out, I don't know if it was the last run or the run before, we always had a little phrase that somebody on the course had used that we thought was especially useful and memorable. And it's thanks to Angela, who picked out a phrase that Mohammed had used. And Mohammed said, students are learners, not prisoners, in one of the contexts. I think it was about allowing flexibility within language use. And I think that is something that I will take away. It really is memorable. So thank you, Mohammed, for saying it. Thank you to Angela for drawing our attention to it. So many other people to thank, but I fear that we are going on quite a lot. Oh, I just must mention Mauro, who describes a minor in international studies at his university, and the fact that the students use English all the time. And the key word in what he writes about is motivation. And this underpins an awful lot of the various discussions that we're having on this course. It's motivation on the part of the teachers to engage in EMI in the first place. What is your motivation? Have you actually addressed that within yourself, in your internal dialogue? What is your motivation? Have you really thought about that in engaging with EMI? And then, of course, the same goes for the students. And do we ever know what might motivate a student? But Mauro notes that his students do appear to be very motivated by the use of English in this particular course. So I'd like to hear more from you, Mauro, and have you actually gone into greater detail with your students about their motivation on the course. I'd like to hear about that. And coming back to some other things that cropped up last week and this week, that are really just my personal questions, information if you like. I'm curious to know where other languages are used as mediums of instruction. How do we say that?
Media of
Media
instruction.
instruction. I don't know what the plural is. Perhaps you can tell me. But anyway, I wondered whether, Brazil, for example, is such a big country in South America, which is surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries. And I wondered if the universities on the sort of like the fringe, the borders of Brazil had Spanish as a medium of instruction because of the need for Spanish. Border towns, cities, etc. need to be multilingual and so on. So I wondered if there was, whether the phenomenon of Spanish as a medium of instruction was happening there at all. Just for my personal interest and curiosity, that's all. But I'm interested if you can tell me about other languages being used as a medium of instruction. I'm avoiding the plural now because I don't know what the plural is. Okay. Should we move on to next week now?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so it's our live session. Now then, when we say live, that means it will be at 11 o'clock British time, UK time, which may be very, very, very early in the morning or very, very, very late in the day for you. So we know it's going to be a problem for people to be with us. But the session will be recorded as well as being live, so you can watch it afterwards as you would any other session, right? Questions go on the step for next week, week 3. Questions can also go on the Facebook group page. We'll put a specific link there for you, so we'd have all the questions together. What else do we need to say?
That you can also join and ask questions.
Oh yes,
in
of course.
In a discussion board around.
Yes, of course. Yes, it's so obvious that you would post your questions on the discussion board as well. So we do hope that you'll be with us it's really great fun when we're actually interacting together at the same moment. It's a wonderful feeling. So if you can, it would be lovely if you could join us, 11 o'clock. You might be having breakfast, you might be having supper, I don't know, but join us if you can. Right, so I think we've spoken quite a lot today, haven't we? So we should shut up.
Yes.
Have a lovely weekend and a lovely week. Please continue to participate as you are doing now. Oh yes, and the person that said I can't comment because I haven't read everything. Don't worry. We find it hard to read absolutely everything. So don't worry if you haven't read everything. Just comment, put your question. Don't be held back by the fact that you haven't read absolutely everything. And of course, people are joining, and you should really, be looking back, going right back to the beginning and rereading everything. So it's pretty much impossible to keep up to date with everything that's going on. So from Rob and Mary in Southampton, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and
Bye-bye.
thank you for all your comments. And see you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.